All right, welcome to the latest episode of Enterprising Minds. I'm Dave, Ruthi, and Alex are both here. We are going to bring 3 topics and talk like we normally would. However, I do have a surprise segment based on one of our last episodes, and I'm thinking out loud, so this will be a fun experiment here. Ruthi and I are going to play Did Alex Have That Job? And so we're going to throw out a couple of titles, and if we got the one, Alex, if you're comfortable sharing, you can tell us about that job. If we don't get it, you can choose whether or not to name one or let us keep guessing until we get it.
All right.
Sound good?
Sounds like fun.
Okay. Ruthi, why don't you throw out the first guess?
Airline marketer.
Yes. Accurate. Did airline marketing at one point.
Okay. Donkey trainer.
No. Volunteered at a horse rescue, which turned out to be wild animal rescue as well. Ended up with llamas, alpacas, Nigerian dwarf goats, some other stuff like that. So volunteered.
I love how close that is. And I also love that I've never heard about this experience before.
Okay.
Turns out llamas or alpacas, maybe both, maybe one of them, they hum like a really high pitched, like warbling hum when they're happy. And weirdly, apparently I make llamas happy. So I just like showed up and I started making this noise and I was like, that's alarming. Like, they're also tall and large and I'm like, K, is it angry? I'm like, no, it really likes you. I'm like, cool.
So that's not an alarm system?
It seems like it would be. Seems like it should be. And Nigerian dwarf goats, yeah, super tiny. I didn't realize there was a couple who lived on Lake Minnetonka, walked them around the lake, like as on a leash. And then they lived in like a pen that was basically underneath their deck, but they ended up having to move and not be able to take them with to this animal rescue place. These Nigerian dwarf goats that love to be petted and act like dogs, which was weird, very weird, but unique experience. Airlines.
We can just end there. I think we're good.
It's a hard transition out of dwarf goats.
The airline one's accurate too. I once interned for a small local company, a very small little company, but most weird experience and fun story off of that one, just quick, was around Christmas, they dress up as elves and hand out candy canes to the people who are waiting for flights. So very small airport, like, the Humphrey Terminal, very small airport. So wearing a hat with, I kid you not, elf ears, handing out candy canes to little kids. And then, of course, I had to take off the hat at some point. So it was the competing airline space, as it turned out, that I was in. I took off the hat and freaked the heck out of some little kids. I was like, I'm so sad.
No.
Sorry,
other fun airline fact, just one more. Turns out if you go to Mardi Gras, Delta puts up a nice little gate you can walk through on your way onto the airplane going to New Orleans as an introductor to Mardi Gras.
Wow. Get you going.
Oh, I was going to Charleston. I didn't even go.
Okay.
I'm not really sure how to transition from those things.
Marketing, Dave. It's marketing.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. 3 topics for today. I guess I'll just talk generally about the Google I/O conference and what you guys thought about the announcement, what you're excited about, what you're not. Ruthi, what do you have?
Very different topic. Whether or not SEO is a luxury good.
It's a very fun one. And then kind of a back to tactics kind of a topic, but how to get more budget for SEO. So either you're hiring more people, or you're trying to sell it, or build up some budget.
Okay. Cool. All right. So a little bit ago, Google did their I/O conference, and I know in the days afterwards, of course, everybody's so quick to, memeify it or do all of the news, and I'm just not going to try to compete with that speed. But somebody put together a video of all the times the CEO said AI. It's actually pretty funny, and it goes on surprisingly long, longer than you would think. So some of the things that jumped out to me, actually, did both of you get a chance to see it?
I was just going to say, I was busy being a mom and doing other things in life. So maybe you can give me a recap.
Okay. Well, yeah, this time better spent. They announced how they're infusing AI largely in response to, what Microsoft has already announced it's going to do with their Copilot and incorporating GPT. So there's Google. Google's incorporating Bard into Google Workplace. So everybody on your team can have access to Bard like through your organizational account, which is cool. It is leveraging. I should have brought all the announcements, to this, but I didn't. So I'm going off the top of my head. It's going to start allowing you to export whatever Bard produces to either Gmail or a doc, which is really nice. And, one of the features that I really liked about Bard before all of these announcements and upgrades was the fact that you could Google whatever topic it was based on what your conversation was with Bard. Right. So if you didn't trust what the AI had the output of, you could then Google it to see what a more traditional source would look like. And then they announced the new SERP, which for me makes a lot of sense for how you would want to incorporate it without destroying your cash cow. So it basically sets up AI as a new SERP feature, along with all of the other ones. And there is, for me, the nice thing about it is that it does have some citations on where it would have pulled the data or related articles from other places specific to the output of Bard in the SERP, which is great because then that allows us to have some opportunities as SEOs to have some content there optimized for it like we would normally. But also it puts more of that onus of being that expert in that particular field if you're going to rank for things, right? And actually generating useful content for the robots to take advantage of, which might be a topic for later things of, as marketers, who are we actually working for now? Yeah, so that's the quick recap. I like the direction it's going. I think the big thing for me is just that citation piece. It could just be my English major background of, if you're going to write something, cite your source, which has always been one of the things that threw me off with GPT or I have a high level of mistrust of, any kind of stats or figures that aren't followed up with something, So yeah, what are your takes?
Well, there was a few things. So one, Aleta Solis, if you're familiar with her, she's rather prolific on Twitter, but also kind of is known as an international SEO expert. She had a really good, and I think very balanced summary coming out from it. So one of them was basically that SEO is not dead, which was kind of the big fear. There's a lot of kind of talk afterwards being like, man, organic results are getting shoved down yet again. So we all know kind of click-through rates drop the lower you go on the page. So that hurts. And she made a really good point, basically saying that as SEOs, we are not, tied to a particular Google feature. Instead, really, we're findability experts. So we're helping customers find the information that they seek. And we're figuring out different ways to do it. One of the other things that Google had mentioned was talk about perspectives, which was their name for kind of short videos that are basically being incorporated inside the SERP. So if you wanted a restaurant review, you could watch this like 10-second clip of somebody's review of it. Potentially, there was some leaks around Project Magi that was talking about whether or not that would come from YouTube Shorts or not, which makes sense. Basically, Gen Z, and they search Instagram and TikTok. So you got to figure out a way so that your product, Google's discovery basically doesn't die off. So some of these elements are like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And then I also go back to Dave, I think you shared this, but it's the Clayton Christensen kind of jobs to be done presentation, talking about people over time had always had this job to be done of discovery and learning. And they used to go to a library and use the Dewey Decimal System. And now they Google it and use kind of random language, restaurant near me, which is an odd phrase. And now we're getting to something more natural where you could say, what are some great restaurants near me that are open now or that deliver in 20 minutes or less? It's just kind of the next step, next iteration too. So if you look at Google 10 years ago versus Google now, yeah, it's changed hugely. But as SEOs, we've existed that entire period of time. And I think that's going to kind of keep going. So how we think of ourselves, I think needs the headspace kind of shift, but that's it. I mean, talk about content. Yes, content's going to change a little bit. Video is a lot harder to produce than a ChatGPT article. I mean, we've seen programmatic SEO create thousands of articles in a day. That means the barrier for, ranking and the moat of content when it's text-based is going to be pretty low. So we need to come up with a different way to show off our expertise, as you were saying, like trying to show basically the value that your brand, your website brings to the searcher. So those pieces, I just want to kind of start with that because that is kind of like a calming, let's stay moderated kind of tone with this. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of change happening very quickly, but it's not necessarily, the sky's falling sort of thing. The other part is I am very concerned about traffic levels. I mean, I think any publisher, especially if you're news or any kind of other kind of publisher that's based upon those clicks, this hurts. I mean, quite frankly, it hurts. You might get impressions. It's the same thing with like the people also asked. You click one of those questions, you get the answer right there. Do you click more results? I'd love to see numbers on that. I doubt most people do. So you've lost clicks, you've lost ad revenue, you've lost impressions. I mean, maybe you get impressions on the SERP, but I'm not even seeing that kind of data show up in GSC, properly shown that you ranked wherever and people also asked. SEMrush does give you that data, but I mean, it seems like some elements aren't quite ready for that, like Google Search Console kind of building up the other side of it. So right. I don't know. That's kind of my first thoughts. Ruthi, do you have some quick ideas on this one?
I do. I think your comments, Alex, tie back to something Dave's talked about, which is it goes back to the foundations and the fundamentals, and that's what you focus on, right? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes SEO is equivalent with I understand Google, but maybe it just needs to shift a little bit to I understand search engines and how they operate, and then expands a bit into those other types of content, which SEO has touched a bit with voice and image, but maybe it goes beyond that. And that's how we see the landscape shifting. I'm also very excited about this new type of search result. We'll toss a link, I suspect, in the show notes or on the blog post of a look and feel of what this looks like. But essentially, you put in sort of your request, you get the AI response, but then you can also see where the sources might pull or related sources. And this to me is very intriguing because what it does is it cuts out the sort of middle crap. Like if you just have a boring answer to an average search question that is duplicating what 10 other search results are saying, the AI is taking you out. Mm-hmm. But if you have sort of an expert level opinion or you have in-depth knowledge on a particular topic, potentially this is to your advantage because you can get the quick answer from the AI, whether that's ChatGPT with Bing or Bard, etc. But then you can go in depth with an expert on the site. So it does lower the moat to some extent, but it also might raise the moat in another dimension, because you actually have to be more on top of your content. And I can't say that I'm too sorry about the crowding out of ad-based websites. I don't know that that's a great way for us to be interacting with the technology, and for us to be essentially the product to marketers. That doesn't seem great. It doesn't seem to be an awesome incentive model for really good content. So that doesn't make me too sad. The last thing that intrigues me is this Google integrating Bard into Workspace, which seems like a very fast follow to what Microsoft's doing. Obvious choice. I'm excited that all these productivity tools become even better. And I'm curious to see how they play out. I suspect both Google Workspace and the Microsoft Office suite are both going to become better. And will there be a number of startups who sort of integrate AI natively, and we get an even better suite of tools than exists today?
Could definitely see that. Yeah, it definitely rang true when they started mentioning, well, Gmail, there's prompts, and now we're going to do better with that. And it's like, oh, so we're talking about Microsoft Copilot? Is that basically what we're talking about here? Yeah. And I mean, Google's tools are nice. I use them professionally and personally, but they aren't as polished as Microsoft's tools. I mean, Sheets versus Excel, there's some major differences there with the browser version, kind of, benefits of that. But you look at like slides, Google Slides versus PowerPoint, it's kind of a joke. I mean, there's such a difference between the two. So I'd love to see that increased competition and focus in that area. And you're right with the ad-based sites. That is the other kind of side of publishers, is that they are ad-based, and that's kind of been their revenue model. Which if you look at, again, sites from 10 years ago versus sites now, there's shifts and there's been changes in the model, like the online marketing model, basically, of how you make money online. And we're getting really ad heavy. I mean, my gosh, try searching for a recipe and it annoys the heck out of me trying to find a recipe site that's not covered in ads, or opening it in some ad blocking, browser, and kind of denying them that revenue anyways. The other one last piece about this is I see this heavily affecting also top of funnel searches. And it is a funnel. The top's bigger. There's a lot of volume there. But as you kind of move down to it, you're still purchasing on a site. You're still continuing those activities, requesting for information on a site. So this is also going to take off a section of it, but this is a section of it that people are looking for a quick answer, or even a slightly more complex answer, but still top of funnel kind of answer. So not a huge loss, some branding loss, absolutely, but that's about it.
I mean, I could see this impacting the different industries a lot more than others. Like we talked with the state of search and SEMrush, retail and travel being impacted quite heavily with their overall traffic in 2022. I could see that being a problem with the new SERP result. Like a lot of these creators that are putting out their content, maybe it's ad supported, maybe it's affiliate supported. But they've developed a little bit of a community to go to these specific places. Well, now my understanding of the new SERP would be that their articles may show up, for the AI generated thing. But will that negatively impact what it is they're doing? Because, we've also seen the flight to quality, and quality in this case meaning the more known sites that have been around a long time with a lot of backlinks from known brands, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this affects the creator economy versus sort of the kind of standard, those other big industries, and whether or not social becomes the audience development place. To then ladder up into your website.
That's an interesting point. Ruthi, sorry, did you want to follow up quick?
Just a quick follow-up right? One of the reasons backlinks are so key is because one of the early signals for search engines about what was relevant or important or useful was, do other people link to it? Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that we're going to see an analogous situation with this credibility piece of what is the thing that the the large language models, the AIs are going to rely on in order to determine credibility. Maybe it's, academic paper style sourcing. Maybe there's some other thing that is going to become maybe not the new standard, but a component into the way credibility is established.
Yeah, there's an interesting point with Google. I mean, they have the EAT kind of formula talking about content, and they added an extra E of experience to try to, I think in some ways, kind of head off some of the AI created content, saying that you actually need to know what you're talking about to publish and get ranked. That's really difficult. I mean, there's this nagging thought that I keep having though with this is to stand out from all this content that's being produced by AI. You have to have a unique perspective. You have to do something a little bit different, something personalized, saying that, Jim's time in Yellowstone was, best described using this, and this was really important, and this was terrible, and this was, all the rest. And I wonder if, and this is my nagging thought, that content will become more divisive, basically more argumentative, just to try to stand out from the crowd. You're going to shout louder or shout a different opinion, a conflicting opinion, just so that the AI says, here's a balanced perspective. Here's somebody who says Yellowstone is terrible for a state park or something, just to be able to show up and just to be able to, get some traffic basically away from this. I don't know. It is a point about the experience. How do you tell who has experience? How do you show the newest information, new additions? And how do you basically better validate that those new additions are from credible sources, not just people who've been publishing recently? So it's a tough scenario. I don't know exactly a good way to kind of get around that.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the thing that's promising, at least for Microsoft and Google doing this, and why at least in these early days, I tend to trust what they're doing a little bit more than just these, one-off, smaller startup AI companies, is the fact that, Google has 25 years of dealing with the most horrible content on the internet. And how do you not show horrible, racist, misogynist, crap, which, a lot of the new startups, they're, they know they have to deal with it, but what experience do they have with that, really? So I don't know. I think the big miss for me is, like, I'm excited for them to have some of the AI things in Sheets or Excel or things like that. But that's really where, at least for me, I think the most value for these AI tools will come, is the fact that I can say, hey, I just wrote this particular thing, or I'm halfway through this paper, summarize it for me, right? All of those kind of additive things that are the next steps. Like, that's what I really want it for. 'Cause that's the kind of writing that is just, it's an also that you have to do. And by the time you get to it, you're already tired. You're kind of done with the topic, right? So I would like to see more of that stuff come around more quickly than just generating random blurbs. But it's exciting to see and where we're going. My final thought on it, though, is you talk about the perspective of SEOs on what it is we're optimizing for. We talked a little bit in a previous episode about how we got started and how we've changed sort of perspectives over time. And really, I think for me, SEO is that health of the entire organization. I think this particular new SERP feature with a generative AI is just going to reinforce that, because if you're not creating content already in order for the robots to take it and feed it into their own answer, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be lost in the sea of everything else. So you can either invest in building the content on the front end, or you can pay out the wazoo for advertising, right? But that's not a new situation. That's just the way it's always been. Are you going to pay for the ads and be disruptive, or are you going to generate a good experience long term for what it is you say you want to do? But I do think, this focus on digital real estate, I have a hard time thinking of how organizations will structure their teams if you're not taking like a spoke and wheel or hub and spoke kind of team setup, right? Where you have your website is your main focus, and then everything else branches off of that. Because if you have somebody who knows the website, knows the flaws, knows the key pillar content, it'll be much easier to create all of this extra content around social posts and ads and all the things that you wouldn't want copyright for. Right now, the robots are able to do that. AI can do that for you. So how soon will we start seeing these changes in the job roles or the organizations? Right, probably 5 years out, just because of how slow a lot of orgs move. Maybe sooner. Who knows? But that was a random thought I had as well. Does that seem viable, interesting, totally off base?
I mean, the job roles, formalized job roles, maybe 3 to 5, closer to the 5 end. But I suspect it'll be sort of an informal job role in that it'll just become a natural expansion. And then
you're the only one left. Do it.
Well, and then eventually other companies realize, oh, okay, that's an advantage. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, think about like the growth of social media marketers. We've all seen that basically come from, man, that's a thing that you're going to throw to an intern to, wow, we really need a director, a manager, and a team to handle our social media presence. I mean, it's a new media format, but it's going to get integrated into the role at some point. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting point you really make there about like the pillar content and knowing the site. I always use this analogy with sites that they should be basically books. So you have a main message, you have your cover that's going to attract people in, that's your homepage. You've got your categories, that's your chapters, and then you've got your supporting copy for the points that the chapters are trying to make. So that's your copy below your categories. And that basically is the structure of a website. It's good information architecture kind of structure. It kind of works. The interesting piece is what you're adding onto it is the missing pictures, graphs, charts, all the things that make, a magazine article or a more interesting book be interesting. Right. And are you adding those different elements in it? Do you know how and where to put those elements in that page, in that book, and how to make the most out of them and understand which ones are worth the time and money, basically. It's interesting. I've always struggled with putting imagery and charts and things. So that's an interesting thought of like, how do we kind of incorporate kind of a rich media, mixed media site, and how do we make it useful again for that individual? There's been a lot of talk about how technical SEO only does like a small percentage difference, and we can debate that at a different time. But there is a main piece that I think is always, glossed over so fast with SEO. Is the basis of SEO is getting in the mindset of your searcher. That's the basis. And figure out what they want, figure out what their fears, their loves, their passions, their interests, their related topics, their education level about that particular topic, how they like to, receive information, short bullet list, because you just have a few points to make anyways. If you like to give them 1,500 words, because at this point they're looking for the advanced, version of your topic or an all-encompassing summary. Like, that's the point. The point is always to get inside that head of that person, and then you create the site to basically reflect that, to serve those interests, to serve those needs. And this might just be another push away from, stop looking at so many of the keyword volume tools and instead start thinking about who this person is and start providing to them.
I like that framing of it. And there's sort of a natural overlap with UX, but the distinction is, right, is as an SEO, you're thinking about the mind space of the potential visitor, whereas the UX is the actual visitor as they're going through. And there's overlap, of course, but it's sort of a different take on those two roles.
And seeing Googlebot as a different type of user as well. What kind of content does it consume? How does it get around the site? All those kind of details.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because if you think, most things in life, and this might just be a particular worldview, but I think, you have 85% of things will just be kind of basic, good enough kind of things. But the stuff that actually makes life worth living is that 10 to 15% on the top, where it's that little bit extra. It's that little, you paid a little bit more money for the nicer bottle of wine, or you have heated seats in a cold environment instead of just the normal ones that require your body heat to warm them up. It just makes life a little bit nicer. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So speaking of life being a little nicer, Ruthie, you had luxury goods on the docket. So why don't you? I'll
give it a little intro. Okay, so this is as I've been thinking about the role of the SEO in the organization, and especially recently, we've had a lot of different large companies doing various tech layoffs, top of mind. Mm-hmm. One of the questions I have is, where does SEO fit in within the company and their growth and maturity and curve? And maybe I'll phrase it a little differently. So is SEO simply table stakes, or is it a luxury good? And some nuances on that. So from the table stakes perspective, is it just an input on how to be best found on the internet, which is table stakes for any website? Or is it something where once you're sort of established, you knew you needed a website, you got the website, but perhaps that wasn't your main driver of revenue. SEO is a way that you can own the market in a way that you weren't before. So then to expand that a little more, do we think of SEO, and the answer could be all of the above, as a good tool for entry and expansion into a market? Or is it a better tool for owning the market and sort of crowding out your competition? And that's, I think, the basis of my question. I think it's important because if it's more of a luxury good, it's the first to go when you have the layoffs. And if it's something that's table stakes, you've got to be there from the very beginning because you're actively helping in that growth stage of the company.
Yeah, I think it depends on first off, it depends on the business model and what you're trying to do. But we've talked previously about how, SEO is kind of like plumbing. Like nobody cares until the toilet's overflowing. And then it's like, oh my God, we have to do something. I think SEO suffers from being, we talked that, sprinkle the magic dust on it and just go do that SEO thing. Like, because it's remained technical and because you actually have to stop and think about your potential visitor, and what they might be thinking or feeling or wanting, right? That there is this high upfront cost in terms of time and depth of thought that a lot of people aren't willing to do just because of how they manage their lives and their meeting schedules, right? That's my hypothesis. I think if you are a small business and you are entering a new space, having a firm grasp of what the SERP landscape looks like, the digital landscape looks like, is absolutely a requirement, because then at least you've done your due diligence before, launching your venture. We talked about the programmatic SEO recently as well, where that is a particular strategy, but that is only after you are established, right? Because you have to have a certain amount of scale and a certain amount of budget to be able to afford the thousands of articles in terms of, creating them, posting them, maintaining them. I guess with AI, you could just spam the hell out of people really quickly and not do any of that and just see what sticks. Personally, I'd try to be more strategic in my life than that, but maybe I'm wrong.
I guess, Dave, I think that the main thing is like what you're saying about the business model. I think of with that organization gets the next question of how important is digital marketing? Kind of expand it up a little bit, or how important is marketing to that company. And if those things are important, then SEO is important too. And just tie it right in with that, because if you're looking to get more customers, then you should think about SEO. If you're trying to get more customers and you're willing to put money forth, I mean, either for an individual or campaign budget, paid search also probably makes sense. Paid social might make sense. Depends on your tactics, depends on your market. I think of like some really niche kind of manufacturers. They basically just need a site, because when someone's searching so specifically, their site probably will pop up because they are so specific. I mean, there's just not much for competition. And they basically are one of the few matches that basically, sells that particular thing or does that particular thing. It also could be super niche to the point where, some product line engineer or design engineer is looking for this specific part. There's not really a good Google search for, weird random shaped part or something like that. Instead, you're just looking for a manufacturer, partner, something like that. That's probably more of a sales mentality to, get their name in front of that audience, to be top of mind. Maybe there is some marketing play there, but it'd be a tough one from a keyword research standpoint. You mentioned before about like SparkToro. Started by Rand Fishkin, creative SEO, Moz, used to be SEO Moz and then Moz. But there wasn't really a good keyword research kind of plan for what he was trying to do. So that's a kind of business model limitation where SEO kind of gets there, but also kind of stops. You could build the brand in different ways and then try to get related audiences and then try to put the brand in front of those audiences. I mean, there's still ways to do it. It's just, that would be like 3 steps down the road, and there's probably faster ways to get a new customer. So
yeah, one of the things that I don't hear a lot of people talking about with SEO is the margins on the products, right? So much of the conversation stops at the search volumes, right? But if you have, let's just say, generally, right, you have an arbitrary cutoff of, I'm only going to do something for 200 searches a month, right? Sure. Well, that's kind of high, depending on what it is you're doing. But to your point with the niche manufacturing or the niche topics, it might be only 20 search volume term, but if each sale is $50,000, I'll do that all day. I absolutely want to do that because I only need a couple of sales each quarter to justify the work around that, right? Like I think of like Rolls-Royce with the airplane engines, or GE with the airplane engines. There's not going to be much of a search volume for that, but each one of those things is so expensive that you need to show up for those, even if it's only 1 or 2 or 3 players in the market for those particular items. Your competition, so you're going to have to beat them, right? Because then that also plays into how to actually get budget for the activities that will support what it is you're trying to do with your SEO, right? Because if you can bring in the margin calls, that'll be a lot easier.
I'd actually argue against your airplane one. There was once I was subcontract as kind of the SEO for an agency, and there was a client that came to them and they made this very specific product and they had 6 potential customers. That's it. And they wanted to do SEO. And my first thought was, why? I mean, heck, take that money, call whatever support line, phone number exists for these 6, take that person out to dinner and start talking to them. Doesn't matter if they're an intern or whoever picks up the phone. Now you have an in, keep working those leads and connections and all the rest. And either your product is either a fit for those companies and needs some tweaks until it becomes a fit, or it's not a fit. And that's it. I mean, if there's only 6, I mean, that's it. There's just not much out there. I mean, if you're Airbus, you know about Rolls-Royce and you know about who's making engines, and you're already established kind of either current customer of them, or there's probably a different method that you could probably go after them. It's a question of, are you breaking new ground? And that's, I think, where SEO plays in, is when's the 7th customer that could potentially buy this product? What are they going to do? Well, they're going to Google it, and then SEO makes sense. When's the new new airplane manufacturer comes up and says, I need a whatever, they're going to Google it, and then Rolls-Royce should show up. So I don't know. I go back and forth with that because there are probably extreme examples like the one I mentioned, but I would hazard a guess that for the majority of companies, getting that traffic is going to be worth spending some time and money towards SEO. Ruthi, what's your opinion on this? What's your take?
I mean, based on the conversation you guys have been having, I am somewhat convinced about SEO is going to play a much stronger role in that discovery piece, which puts it more on almost the table stakes piece, depending on your business, of course, right? So I think the dichotomy of table stakes versus luxury is perhaps a poor one in this scenario, which is just fine. So then it's, if you're looking to grow, SEO is an important part of your toolkit. And if you already know your customers and you know your market, SEO can be important if you know that's an important part of your customer's way of interacting with you, right? So that when they search for something, they're still finding you and you're there for them. But if you have customers and you know them all and that's just not your way to go, you can better spend your money elsewhere.
There's one that I also kind of struggle with, and I'd be interested in your guys' opinions on this one. So, my family, there's a bunch of small businesses. One of them is a plumbing repair business. And I keep in my mind over many, many years trying to think, is SEO actually a good play for a local plumber? Mm-hmm. Because it becomes this weird thing of like HomeAdvisor is getting fined, to be honest, finally, for some of the junk that they've been pulling. But there's so many other companies that are pushing ahead. Does, this random local website have any chance of ranking? Not really. Fill out your Google My Business profile, absolutely. I mean, there's a local, search kind of component of making sure that you show up correctly, the phone number is correct, it's not an old number. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, get your name, area, place, location page and stuff kind of figured out. That I can get, but general SEO for, plumbing repair or trying to rank for every plumbing article out there. I mean, you search for stuff for DIY kind of stuff and you come across plumbing companies across the United States who have tried that. So they're offering free advice, and I'm not hiring them because they're in North Carolina and I'm in Minnesota, or, I'm somewhere else.
So this was one of the things that I thought of as you were rebutting my airplane example, which I should know not to have brought up given the first segment of the show. But I think it like anything, what's your strategy? If you're doing product marketing via SEO, that is a very particular need that also has some underlying assumptions to it. Whereas if you're doing SEO as a brand narrative, reputational control method, that's a totally different thing. And that's kind of where my brain immediately goes to of, I want to be able to control the narrative people may have, or control as much as it's possible what people find when they type in my business, my product, or me personally, right? Because people don't know to search for things they don't know about. So when they become familiar with it, they're going to search. And what is that first experience with that search, right? The example that I like to use is, my departed grandma was a gardener, and she made the mistake of typing in Mexican flowers into Google and then was very surprised with the results that she got. And she didn't Google for a while after that because of that experience. Now, that's where that example dies. But this reputational management idea is going to be more and more important, especially with the AI piece of it, where if you have trust with an audience, trust in a segment, you will be more likely to rank. Therefore, you will be more likely to derive more of the traffic, convert more of the traffic, and show up for more of those terms. Um, Whereas, and again, it goes to the Clayton Christensen job to be done. If you are solely looking for a plumber, if it's I have a leak, I just need him to tighten something. Well, then, yeah, the YouTube videos might make sense because, okay, you can grab whatever random tools you have in the house and do it yourself. But if it's something more major, then yeah, you need that now. That's where that local comes in because you're optimizing for that emergency section, not the kind of general contractor that I know, like, and trust. Right.
I think there is a really good tie back in this plumber example to what we were talking about earlier about shifting the idea of an SEO. Like if we're just thinking about SEO as optimizing the copy that's going to help you rank for all these questions out on the internet, yeah, that's probably needs to change. AI is going to dominate that every day. But if we're thinking about SEO as how do we make sure that the small business plumber is able to be seen when people in the area are searching and are looking for it, that seems like a really great play. But it takes a different form than copy optimization on a web page.
And this is where I think SEO is, at least for me, migrating more towards that that PR idea of if we assume SEO is and your ability to rank for things is incumbent on getting credit for all of the things you do in and around your business, then you need to be doing all of those things in order to take up that digital real estate and get credit for it. So what does that mean? You're going to put a higher priority on YouTube Shorts if it's going to be pulled into the perspectives things. You're going to put a higher priority on having TikTok or Instagram if those results are going to be brought in. You're going to be doing articles so that you can have the blue links, even if it only makes up 60% of the SERP experience, right? And then as you build your business to a higher level, now you can take up more real estate on the key terms because you can afford, to post that sign in the digital space, right?
I got a question for you, Dave. I think you may have answered part of it already, but this one I'm just kind of tossing around in my head. So, we're talking about enterprise level companies as well. So from an enterprise standpoint, can you build trust and reputation online through content and not have an online personality? What I mean is like not having a personal spin on articles, building up some sort of, I'm not going to say like Wendy's Twitter, I mean, as far as that, but like some sort of, personality to each piece of content. How do you build your reputation and trust without creating that?
Without the figurehead?
Yeah, without the figurehead, basically by being the, blank corporate brand that there are so many out there and they don't like to put a personality behind their copy. Can you still create trust in a basically relationship-like way without having that personal touch?
Absolutely. John Deere started a magazine, 1895. That's why I was looking down. I was looking up when it started. It's called The Furrow, and it's a very popular example of, Content Marketing Institute, all those guys. Because they realized if they could support farmers in doing better farming, knowing that audience, knowing the perspectives, knowing the trouble that they are having, if they can do better farming and they get reliable information from the company, you will be more likely to come and reward the company with your business. We have been obsessed with kind of rock stars for a while in our culture, in even the business world, right? The obsession with the genius founder and all of that BS. That's a modern interpretation of things. But if you have the organization actually go with this idea, you absolutely can. Airbnb tried it for a while with their magazine called I think it was Pineapple or something like that. It was a traditional media play where it was, we're going to build a magazine around the experiences you can expect from our organization so that you can like and trust that you will have a safe, fun experience with this new concept of staying in a stranger's home, right? Because not all of us are comfortable with that, still. And you don't need the rock star figurehead, but what you do need is you need to have enough people in the organization good with the idea to do the long play. Red Bull Media House, another example of that, right? That started as a magazine specifically for the Red Bull team with the F1 races, and then that ballooned into what everybody thinks of now, right? We discussed that. So it is absolutely possible. We're just so used to that figurehead cult worship that we lose sight of what's actually possible.
I guess there's one more I was just thinking of. We mentioned about Moz. Mm-hmm. I mean, SEO Moz got its kind of popularity from its blog, but a lot of its blog content is actually submissions from the community. I mean, it helps kind of share it as well, but it also means that Moz didn't really have to have such a personality actually even on their own company blog. Others did. I mean, they had I'm sure some editorial standards and the like that they wanted to make sure that were fitting, but they put the disclaimer at the top saying it doesn't represent Moz and this is the author's view and all that kind of stuff. And they were able to build up a ton of content and they didn't even create most of it.
Right. And that, Huffington Post had the exact same thing, right? I mean, they were syndicating other people's articles.
Yeah.
They very rarely wrote their own. And that, still to this day, that's what's going on. They have some of their own writers and stuff, but yeah, for the most part, it was just reposting other things. I will say, my one reaction to your Moz example is, that the community generated content is absolutely a good play if you're going for that. Let's build that community around the particular specialist, right? Because then It's a safe place to nerd out with like-minded people on a particular topic. However, you need to have good products to sell into that community and not just host a community, right? You also have to have that other side. Otherwise building a community and an audience, people just make it seem super easy. Well, just get the audience and then, you'll have the money. No, that's actually really hard to do because if, it's a relationship like anything else. If you break that trust and the tiniest little thing could break the trust, you're gone. Community's gone, right? You're not getting that back. So it is a longer play. It is a harder play, but I think longer term, it serves you much better than just being disruptive and interruptive with your advertising. Ads serve a point, right? I'm not totally against ads. It's a tool. It should be used, but I think there are better ways. Ruthi, thoughts? You're just kind of sitting there looking shocked.
I'm enjoying the thread. I wasn't expecting the question Alex brought up, and I really wasn't expecting the answer you responded with, and I was just enjoying the whole interplay.
All right. Cool. Alex,
final question.
Finish this off.
Last one? Do this? Okay. So this is a common question. I think it's brought up a lot, but never answered well. So I just wanted to...
So let's add to it.
Yeah, right. So I wanted to add a few points to it and then give it, some real world examples. And that's basically how do you get more budget for SEO? And we've all been there. So it's a common problem, but I've seen so many poorly worded or half-baked articles on it that I just wanted to try basically giving my own answer to it. But I really wanted to see what your guys' opinions and additions are to it, because this is just what's kind of worked. And I'm sure there's a lot more out there, and you've had very different experiences that I've had with this as well. So a few different tactics that I found that kind of works well for getting more budget. One of which is there's a black eye approach. Basically, you ask for what's our top competitors, or heck, you can ask ChatGPT, what's your top competitors with this company, and you'll get a list. compare them, contrast them against your own SEO efforts, highlight the ones that are doing pretty well and what they're doing well about themselves, and say, hey, we should at least keep up with the competition. We need to get going. Mm-hmm. And that can help. That can really work well, especially for those who are, neck and neck, or really keeping an eye on their competition, or competition has been a hot button issue recently. Great way to go after it. There is also a positive spin, which is asking your boss or your boss's boss, figure out, whoever the decision maker is, what are some companies that they look up towards. So it might be that they really love Apple.com and they really love the simplicity of Apple. I was like, okay, that's one that gets mentioned all the time. So I'm going to just throw that in there. Or maybe it's some other kind of companies in the area because they're doing some unique digital marketing efforts for some different area or different reason. They're doing a webinar series, they're building an audience, it could be something else too. And it starts opening up and sparking conversation of, okay, where does SEO fit in there? Can we do webinars ourselves, and can SEO help push it? Or can we write a blog ourselves and SEO can help, decide what kind of content we should write? There's different ways to kind of go after that one. And then I'll just run through my next one, and then I want to bring it up to you guys of kind of what your opinions are. Valuation. Basically, how do you get an exact dollar amount? I think this one's really difficult. And this one, a lot of companies struggle with, especially if you're not an e-commerce, cut and dry company where, you can look at your analytics and say X number of visits typically gets us X number of dollars, and therefore we want more visits, so we'll get more dollars. And as long as we spend correctly, we'll get a return. That one's easy, but most people aren't easy. So that's not really helpful for a lot of companies. One that I've seen work is search engine marketing kind of side of the Google Ads side of it, either current cost or potential cost and savings. So you basically say, we are going to go after these terms. Typically, we would be spending this much amount of money to be getting traffic for these terms that are highly related. And by doing our SEO strategy instead, we're going to have some savings on that. Bigger numbers, the better. Or you can say, we are currently spending X number of dollars. We might be able to reduce that spend if we rank better or show up better in organic results, which get a higher click-through rate anyways. So, it might be worth it. It could also be worth it just to do both, but it's one way to kind of build up some budget or try to carve out some budget too. Mm-hmm. The other one kind of is you can go at it from a brand play option. Dave, you actually went through quite a few of those topics already, talking about basically the brand aspect of SEO, where it's reputation management. You want to show up. You're trying to make sure that if people are searching for your products or things related to your products, that you show up and it's not some random blogger or somebody's opinions or a news article that might be negative. Right. There's a brand aspect there. And then the last one, which this one has worked really well for me, is especially when doing paid search and kind of the advertising side of digital marketing. Kind of another significant chunk of my background. I always think about kind of the ad side of this. And this was a game that I always played because it's an awkward topic, but you have to figure it out. What are you willing to spend? What's your number? And quite frankly, nobody has a number ever in their mind, but they do have a gut feeling on a number. And quite frankly, that's good enough. It's good enough to start.
Same problem with engagement rings.
Just because, they have a number, but they don't have a number. Yeah.
And you really don't know what you want to spend, but it always seems a little too much.
My number was lower than that. That's all I know. But the game I would play, and it would make people awkward. So I had to give a little bit of intro to it, saying we need to basically have a starting figure so that I can determine whether or not I'm providing a good return on this investment. So I need you to bear with me for the next 3 minutes, and we're going to play a little silly game, but it's going to give me at least a good starting point. We're going to get through this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to get you a lead or your current form. You say, okay, I'll get you one more lead and it's going to cost you $1,000. Would you pay for that? And they'll be like, no, absolutely not. Okay, $100. Would you pay for that? Yeah, I'd probably pay $100. Okay, $250. $250 is kind of pushing it. Okay, we'll call it $200 and we'll just start from there. And that basically is a good enough number to say a form fill is worth $200. And that's good enough to basically carve a budget, because I mean, how does anybody estimate how much money they want to put towards anything? Is they have some kind of idea of what kind of return they're getting, and they think it's, you know, a good bet or it's not a good bet. That's it. It is bets. I mean, nobody knows from a budget perspective of what you're really going to get as a rate of return. So it's good enough. Same thing you can do from webinar viewer. I'll get one more webinar viewer. Can't comment on quality, but basically whatever you're currently getting right now, just one more. Would you pay $50 for that? Would you pay $25 for that? Okay, I'll try to get 100 of them. So then I have some decent, you know, starting point for budget. I can get a new tool or, you know, some part-time help or something, increase some hours of an agency. MQLs, SQLs, some marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. You pick it. You can basically play this game with any of them. And I've never had someone refuse to play the game, and I've played this game at least a dozen times, if not more than that. So it does work. And from the paid search standpoint, I mean, that's the thing you're stuck with always is, what am I going to set as my cost per click, you know, for my ads? And you don't know until someone can tell you, hey, it's going to be this. And you can say, okay, we'll estimate a 3% conversion rate or 1% conversion rate because we're just starting out. And we'll assume a 2% click-through rate or, you know, 6% click-through rate, whatever it is, depending on what system you're using, advertising system and all the rest. But that's the one I use. What have you guys tried? What have you seen work? What are some different ideas that you have, either from kind of the competition black eye, like we're comparing SEO versus SEO, they're doing good, they're doing bad, or something like that, or we're doing bad, or the kind of valuation side of it?
You know me, I'm always good for an opinion, but I'm interested in Ruthi's first, if I can put you in the hot seat.
Okay, deal. I'll go first. So played with all of those, and I think this comes back to something we've talked about in the past, which is just knowing your audience and adapting your pitch, in this case, to the audience. Within those, a tactic that I've found particularly helpful is pulling up a visual or having it ready on a slide deck or screenshot, whatever, of the search results for something you know that they should be ranking for and that they know they should be ranking for, so that they can see you're missing and like, here's the potential and here's what we're talking about, to make it very concrete, and showing the absence. And I think the fast follow to that are the starter tactics that get the quick results, right? Especially if you're working with a site that has a lot of potential, but because they're just missing some of the basics, there's, to use the corporate term, there's low-hanging fruit everywhere, right? Giving them a couple of, maybe even you're walking alongside them and updating the pages with what you know makes sense, to like say, hey, here's the potential. And then if you want to do this on a wide scale, here's the dollar figure, which then potentially you make the argument about that ROI. That way they have something to grasp onto. I think the trickier one is the big technical pieces, right? If there's a lot of technical debt getting in the way, or if there's just some real significant problems with the site, those can be harder, because on the one hand you want to show like, hey, here's how you're getting in your own way, but that also puts you in such a negative light of like, we're the problem fixers, like we're the plumbing, versus that aspirational growth of here's how this is going to help you grow, which I think is this is where you're missing in search results has a much stronger incentive about it, because it shows the potential of what you could be getting.
Yeah, with the technical ones, I usually go to a user example, basically saying like, you know, we're going to focus on core web vitals, for instance. Well, here's a really slow loading page. Let's try loading it during a meeting and wait for the awkward pause of, yes, now we're finally loaded. Okay, it's been 20 seconds. What the heck? There's other pages that of course would be like the worst one. Yeah.
Sitting in that awkward silence is really powerful. You know, making everybody wait. I think the points that you guys bring up are all valid, and I agree with all of them, and I've done all of them in my experience thus far. I do think, you know, the fact that SEO really has to go in between the technical side and the business side, as we've discussed previously, puts us at a disadvantage, because, you know, some SEOs will be better at going to the technical side, talking to the technical people, the technical teams. Others will be much more suited to hanging out with the salespeople and the business leadership because that's their vocabulary. I do think, and this is not limited to digital marketers. This is like an all marketers thing. And I would even challenge technical teams to get better about this too. But understanding actually the financial terms and the financial context in which you are operating in, because that is how you are actually going to convince people. You know, if you just say, yeah, traffic went up and to the right. Okay, cool. So what? What does that mean? Right. Alex, you kind of touched on it a little bit of you know, you can forecast a little bit by what, you know, what spend you want and all of that. I think where the initial response is to say, okay, you put X number of dollars in, I get X number of dollars out. That should be good enough for you to say yes to my marketing idea. But it's not, because if you end up looking at where in the budgetary items, like if you take an annual report or a quarterly report or even a monthly P&L, and you look at where marketing expenditures and the value driven by those marketing expenditures come into play, you're in two categories that are not awesome to be in, right? You have SG&A and you have intangible assets. All right. So if you build the brand, cool. You don't control what that market value is other than through the perception of your company. So if you're having a particularly good year, yeah, that's a great thing to be able to talk about. Is it a really hard number that you want to stake your career on? No. With SG&A, this goes back to Ruthi's point about, is SEO a luxury good? In this sense, yeah. Because if you're under the same line item as the secretaries, the pens, and post-it notes that you buy to keep your office running, and that's where your advertising and your marketing spend is also, if you're having a couple of down quarters, then yeah, you're going to go to that SG&A line item and reduce it, right? Because it's in the name. It is general spend. So until we can make a better narrative around actually the monetary and fiscal value of these things, we're going to struggle. And I think
there's a mix there.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's knowing the business and how to basically speak the language of the accountants, the financiers, and upper management, but then also being able to make that more emotional argument of, you're missing out from here, or this is what we could be doing, and giving that vision, because you need the emotional side of it to get people hooked, and then back it with the other half.
And the intangible asset argument is, if you're Prada, then you're absolutely going to be looking at that. Right, because that industry is a very specifically brand-driven industry, right? But if you're that niche manufacturer, like Alex brought up previously, brand probably doesn't matter. It's probably one of those, small manufacturers in the business parks you drive past, and you wonder who's back there. It'll be like Johnson and Sons. Well, that doesn't tell me anything, but your sign's been up for 20 years, so you must be doing something. Yeah. Anyway, Alex, you were going to say something?
There's one last one. I've never really gotten this pitch to work, so I'll start to preface it with that. But it's one that I've always hoped would, because I think it's the right idea, especially even with the AI content. And people also asked kind of a section of it too. Is basically going after customer service and saying, what kind of phone calls are they getting? What kind of information could we make it so that they can just Google it instead? How many hours can we save basically by, not getting that question anymore, whatever the most frequent question is? Mm-hmm. What kind of information can we make it easier for our users, our customers, to be able to find That's going to improve kind of their view of our company, plus how many are frustrated versus how many call in. There's probably a lot more frustrated ones out there than even that are even calling in. So we can estimate that we're even helping more customers than even just the ones who usually would call in. Can we change that volume? Plus, I always think of it as just an absolute gold mine for content ideas, because those are your customers. Those are the ones who are interested. Those are already ones who are talking to you and being active.
Right.
Yeah. What they're looking for, I'm sure others are looking for too. And it's worth putting together, an FAQ or blog post or an addition to a product detail section or something like that.
For every person
Never gotten to
called,
work.
how many people searched? Oh, for every person who called, how many people searched the same thing and just didn't get their answer and gave up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in that sense, I like to grab some questions and say, people are uncomfortable asking this particular question in real life, and therefore they Google it. This is the potential value. I will say one addition to your competitive piece that I've found really helpful is if you take those annual reports and what their business leadership says, right? Like if you get a CEO to say, we invested $20 million in this digital initiative, and then you go find the case study from whatever agency they used, on that. And then, whatever articles might be based around that, to then say they put $20 million in. This is the amount of revenue that was generated as reported by their agency and as reported by this news agency. So now we can do some estimations around that. What's up? Why are you saying no? That can be useful. Again, it just depends on how politically motivated you are. But on that note,
are you gonna segue us?
you know what? I'm not. I need to get better on ending on a positive thing. But general life goals. This was a really good conversation. I think we're going to probably have like a part 2 and a part 3, but my brain's kind of fried from keeping up with you guys. So I'm going to have to come back to it. To everybody who's listening, thank you for staying with us. Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts, please let us know on the social media. You can find that on the YouTube description. Transcript and links and examples will be on the Dave Dougherty Media website blog page for the particular podcast episode. And you can reach out. We have an email now. So we will put that in the description to reach out to us and let us know any thoughts, episode ideas, anything you might have. So appreciate it. Take care. See you in the next episode.
Cheers.